My name is Nathan Colburn, and today I'm going to tell you how my life collapsed overnight, and how a single metal lockbox changed everything I thought I knew about family, loyalty, and truth. What started as the worst day of my life led me to a secret buried for 40 years, hidden behind lies that ran through my marriage, my job, and even my own bloodline. Stay with me till the end. You won't believe who was behind it all. But before we begin, take a second to subscribe to the channel and tell me where you're watching from. Every comment keeps this channel alive and pushes me to bring you more unbelievable true-style stories every day. I was living in a 5x10 storage depot on Highway 17, surviving on cold cans of beans and borrowed time. That's where I found it, a metal lockbox with my name scratched across the top. Inside sat $48,000 in cash and a folded letter that simply read, "This is just travel money." The truth is waiting in Silvergate. 8 months earlier, I had everything a man could want. A wife, 2 kids, and a steady job at Halston Timber Works, the biggest wood processing plant in Ironvale, Dakota. Now, all I had was the smell of rust and concrete, a gold band I'd pawned for $45, and a text from my ex-wife that said, "You'll end up broke and forgotten." Laura Whitmore, my ex-wife, used to warn me I was too trusting. "You trust too easily, Nathan, and the world doesn't reward that," she'd say, stirring her morning brew in our pale cream kitchen, sunlight bouncing off the window. Funny thing is, the person who warns you about snakes is usually the one already hiding the fangs. Brent Halston, my boss, owned the mill and most of Iron Vale. His father, Martin Halston, had built the business decades ago, and Brent inherited it along with his taste for luxury sedans and other men's wives. For 15 years, I kept that place running while Brent played golf and cashed checks he didn't earn. My son Jake had just made varsity football, 14 and full of promise. My daughter Lily, 11, had her mother's smile and my stubbornness. At least I thought she had her mother's smile. Turned out she only had the mask of a woman paid to pretend she loved us. See, the truth doesn't hit all at once. It unravels slowly, like an old rope giving way thread by thread. That lockbox in my hands wasn't a coincidence. It came from Walter Briggs, my late uncle, a Vietnam vet everyone thought had lost his mind after my father's accident at the mill. He'd spent decades alone in the hills near Silvergate, writing letters no one answered. Turns out the man everyone called unstable was the only one who ever saw things clearly. Inside the box, along with the cash, was a single line that changed everything I believed about my past. "Your father didn't fall. He was pushed." It was February in Iron Vale, the kind of cold that freezes your breath mid-air. I sat there on a folding cot, the air thick with cigarette smoke from old renters, a portable burner hissing beside me. That's when I realized Laura had been wrong. I wasn't poor, not yet. And I wasn't alone either. Not once my kids learned the truth. Because the man who died that night wasn't me. It was the version of me that believed in honest work, loyalty, and the goodness of people. That man was gone, buried beneath betrayal, burned out by lies. The coordinates from Walter's note pointed 1,000 miles west, to a mountain lodge outside Silvergate, where answers waited among the pines. I didn't know it yet, but that trip would reveal that the same man who destroyed my marriage was also the son of the man who killed my father. This isn't a story about revenge. It's about truth, and how sometimes you have to lose everything to finally see what was always hidden beneath the surface. A storage depot, a dead man's map, and an inheritance that wasn't just $7.6 million in hidden money. It was the truth about who I really was. Because sometimes justice doesn't arrive in a courtroom. Sometimes it waits 40 years, buried under sawdust and silence, until someone desperate enough goes looking for it. When I packed my few belongings and set out for Silvergate, I thought I was chasing money. But what I found there made me question everything, including whether my own wife had ever been real. I used to be just Nathan Colburn, the kid sweeping sawdust at Halston Timber Works and driving a coughing pickup. Right after graduation, I married Laura Whitmore, the girl everyone said was out of my league. Her parents thought she was settling, but she wanted the real thing. Our reception at the community lodge was small. Uncle Walter Briggs raised his glass and warned, "Watch out for wolves in sheep's clothing." People laughed it off as a veteran's ramble. I didn't. Not anymore. We bought a modest house on Willow Drive. 3 rooms, 1 bath, a pale cream kitchen catching the morning sun. Every dawn I'd sip my morning brew, watching light spill across Laura's hair while she packed Jake's lunch. Jake was born during a blizzard, strong and restless. Lily came 2 years later, quiet, sharp, forever handing me wrenches in the garage. The mill's insurance and steady pay gave us 1 week each summer at Lakeview Shores, renting the same Silver Bay cabin. The kids built castles. Laura read paperbacks under an umbrella. Back then, I thought life couldn't be purer. When Brent Halston took over the mill after his father Martin died, things changed. The old man had been fair. Brent was spoiled. He'd swagger through the main production hall twice a week, reeking of bourbon and charm. I ran the crews. He took the credit. His eyes lingered too long on women, especially Laura. Uncle Walter lived 3 hours north in a mountain lodge he'd built alone. Every winter gathering, he'd mutter that my father's death wasn't an accident. Mom would hush him. After she passed, he grew silent, but his stare carried warnings. The last time I saw him, he looked frail and certain. He pressed a small key into my palm. For when you need it most. Laura's shift came quietly. New dresses we couldn't afford. Comments about better opportunities. "Brent says there's room for advancement," she said one night. I thought she meant for me. Turns out she meant with him. That Friday in April, I felt sick on the floor line. Carl Benson noticed. "Boss, go home before you drop." By noon, I was driving back, stomach burning. Turning onto Willow Drive, I saw a silver luxury car in my driveway, Brent's. My first thought, an accident at the plant. I parked on the curb. Our front door was locked, unusual for Iron Vale. As the key turned, laughter floated from upstairs. Not polite laughter. Intimate. Each step up those stairs felt heavier. Family photos stared back. Jake's trophies, Lily's drawings, our wedding portrait. The bedroom door stood half open. Brent sat on my side of the bed tying his shoes. Laura brushed her hair before the mirror in a satin robe I'd never seen. They chatted about Florence, about a dinner at Skyline Terrace Bistro, like they weren't wrecking a home. "Hello, Brent," I said. For once, he froze. No smirk, no words. He grabbed his jacket and brushed past me. Laura didn't move. She kept brushing, eyes hollow. "How long?" I asked. "Does it matter?" She answered flatly. That was the moment the life I'd built cracked clean through. She thought it ended there, with humiliation. But she didn't know Uncle Walter's lockbox held more than cash. It held the proof that what happened in that room was only the first move in a plan set decades before I was born. "Our kids sleep in this house, Laura." "My kids." She turned, eyes frosted. "Your kids? Jake wants more than your dead-end life. Lily's already sharper than you'll ever be. They deserve better. Better like Brent?" I asked. She lifted her chin. "Brent's taking me to Europe next month. He's buying me a central loft. He's showing me what life looks like when you stop pretending." I stared at the woman I'd built my world around. I dreamed of a family, of raising good kids with someone who loved me. She gave a dry, empty laugh. The person you loved never existed. I played a role. I'm done pretending this is enough. The next morning, I put on my work jacket and drove to Halston Timberworks like nothing had shattered. My crew was already at their machines when Brent's assistant told me, "Mr. Halston wants to see you." Brent sat behind his father's old walnut desk, the one Martin Halston had built by hand decades ago. "We're restructuring," Brent said flatly. "Budget cuts. Your position's being eliminated, effective immediately." "I've been here 15 years, I reminded him. He didn't even look up. "You've been adequately compensated. Sign the separation papers and you'll get 10 days' pay. Refuse and you get nothing." "This is about Laura." He finally smiled, a curling grin that made my hands tighten. "This is about efficiency, Nathan. Nothing personal, I signed. Because no job meant no attorney, and no attorney meant losing everything faster. As Marvin Tate, the night watchman, walked me out, I saw the men I'd trained looking down, silent. They all knew what really happened. In a town like Iron Vale, word travels faster than the mill whistle. The divorce papers arrived a week later. Laura's lawyer was the sharpest in Bryan County, somehow paid with money she shouldn't have had. She demanded the house, the kids, alimony, everything. Judge Alden, who'd just received donations from Halston Enterprises, called me unstable. Her lawyer waved a photo of the garage wall I'd punched once in anger. That one crack in plaster erased 14 years of marriage and 15 years of steady work. When it ended, I had no home, no rights, no family. Just debt and a half-filled duffel bag. You don't plan to live in a storage depot on Highway 17. It just happens, one humiliation at a time. First, you sleep in your truck until the sheriff warns you off. Then you crash on couches until your friends' wives stop meeting your eyes. Finally, you stand at the counter of a storage facility, handing over $92 you borrowed, pretending it's temporary. That's how Unit 46B became my address. Marvin Tate looked the other way when I stayed after hours. I turned that concrete box into a half-home, a cot against one wall, my father's wooden toolbox as a table, a battery lantern for light. I showered at the local gym for $12 a month, cooked meals on a portable burner, and learned the art of silence. 3 weeks in, I started sorting through boxes Laura had dumped on me, scraps of a life she no longer wanted. Family scrapbooks, service ribbons, old holiday ornaments. Every piece was a wound you couldn't stitch. Then I saw it, a metal lockbox wedged behind a bin of decorations, a hard-shell clasp case with a tag in Uncle Walter's shaky handwriting. My name. But Walter had been dead 8 months. I tried every combination. Birthdays, anniversaries. Nothing. Finally, I jammed a screwdriver under the clasp until it snapped. The lid popped open with a metallic crack that echoed through the unit. Inside, cash. Neat stacks wrapped in bands. I counted twice. $48,000. More than I'd ever seen, but the letter beneath it froze me. Nathan, if you're reading this, you've lost everything. Good. A man can't rebuild until the ground's cleared. This money isn't charity. It's travel funds. Drive to these coordinates in Silvergate, Dakota. Park at the Red Gate on Bear Trail Path. Walk north 1 mile to the rock shaped like a bear's head. Behind it, you'll find the truth about your father's death. He wasn't killed in a mill accident. Martin Halston murdered him for refusing to sell his share of the mineral rights. I sat there in that storage box surrounded by proof and ghosts, realizing my uncle hadn't been mad. He'd been waiting for me to open my eyes. Those rights are worth millions now, and they belong to you. Uncle Walter Briggs' handwriting wavered across the yellow paper. I've spent 40 years gathering proof, building my own fortune from the share your father left me. But cancer's got me, and I won't live to see justice. That's your job. The Mountain Lodge has everything. Documents, recordings, photographs, and truths about that wife of yours. Don't trust anyone, especially family. Reggie Briggs has worked for the Halstons for years. Make them pay for what they stole. Walter. I read the letter 6 times. Each pass carved the same message deeper. My father hadn't died in an accident. He'd been murdered. The coordinates pointed somewhere in Pine Ridge Reserve, outside Silvergate, Dakota. I sat on that narrow cot, the metal lockbox beside me, stomach growling, trying to decide. 48 nost. $1,000 could buy an apartment. Maybe a lawyer to fight for Jake and Lily. But the words, "Your father was murdered," pulsed louder than hunger. By dawn, I'd already chosen. I paid $7,200 cash for a battered mid-size pickup. No questions asked. I filled it with camping gear, dry food, and enough fuel to outrun my past. No one knew I was leaving. My children were legally gagged from calling. My friends had quietly disappeared. Before I left Iron Vale, I drove one last time down Willow Drive. Jake's bike leaned against the porch rail. Lily's curtains were now purple, not the pink we'd picked together. Laura's compact car was gone, probably parked outside Brent Halston's central loft downtown. Life kept moving, just without me. The trip west took 3 days, highways blurring into rain and dust. By the third night, the map lost its lines. Asphalt turned to gravel, gravel to dirt. Bear Trail Path appeared beneath a riddled sign half buried in brush. The red gate was more rust than paint, but the key from Walter's ring slid in clean. I parked, grabbed a backpack, and followed the pocket compass north. The forest swallowed everything. Pines pressed so tight the sunlight fractured into stripes. My heartbeat filled the silence until I saw it. A massive boulder shaped like a bear's head. Walter hadn't exaggerated. Behind it, hidden under, vines wound a narrow path leading to a cabin that shouldn't have existed. This was no hermit shack. Steel door, solar panels, power units humming behind a shed, satellite dish aimed at the sky. The key clicked again, and I stepped into a room frozen in purpose. One wall was a storm of evidence: photographs, maps, news, clippings, strings linking faces I knew and ones I didn't. Another wall held file drawers labeled in Walter's cramped print. A desk supported 3 glowing monitors and a row of drives humming quietly. Front and center, my father. Henry Colburn, smiling beside Martin Halston, shaking hands over a signed property grant, dated 1978. Folder after folder told the story. My father hadn't just worked for Halston Timber Works, he'd co-owned it. His half included mineral rights inherited from my grandfather, land sitting on a vast natural gas deposit. When he refused to sell, Martin Halston proposed a partnership. Months later, an industrial accident crushed him beneath a timber loader whose maintenance records were forged the night before. An insurance policy worth $7.6 million had been written in Martin's name only weeks earlier. Case closed within 7 days. Walter had spent decades digging. Witness statements, bank ledgers, court filings, proof. But none of that prepared me for the folder marked LP. Inside were photographs of Laura Pritchard, my ex-wife, at 16, standing beside Brent Halston, already in his late 30s. More photos followed through the years, always distant, always careful. Then the bank records, an account under her maiden name, opened at 17. Regular deposits from a Halston Enterprises shell company. My hands trembled as I pressed play. On one of the recordings stored on the encrypted data drive, Walter's voice, gravel rough. Following LP to meeting with BH at Creekside Inn. Then her voice, Laura's, sharp, controlled. He's getting suspicious. How long do I have to keep pretending? Brent's reply oozed confidence. Until we can provoke him into something we can use in court. He needs to look unstable, not betrayed. Another clip, dated 4 years later. Laura, again, voice lower now. I've been married to him 14 years, Brent. I've had his children. Sometimes I forget I'm pretending. The static that followed was louder than the words. I sat in that cabin surrounded by proof that my marriage, my career, my entire life had been scripted long before I was old enough to fight back, and somewhere beneath that mountain of evidence waited the next step. A key labeled Vault Room. I had no idea yet what it opened, only that the truth wasn't finished speaking. Brent, those kids are your insurance policy. He won't fight too hard with them in the crossfire, and once he's broken, the mineral rights revert to his next of kin. As his ex-wife with custody, you'll control everything until they're 18. The recording ended, and silence filled the cabin. Laura hadn't fallen out of love. She'd never loved me at all. She'd been placed in my life like a chess piece groomed by a man twice her age. At 17, she'd been trained to destroy me decades later. The files spelled it out. Those mineral rights my father refused to sell were now worth $7.6 million. Uncle Walter Briggs had collected lease payments from his share for 40 years, living like a hermit while quietly amassing a fortune. Every dollar traced, every signature legal. And the will on his desk made it clear everything now belonged to me. But Walter hadn't just left money, he'd left a case airtight enough to sink Halston Timber Works. Environmental fraud, bribery, tax evasion, names that included Judge Alden who'd ruled in Laura's favor. Each folder was a weapon waiting to be fired. At the bottom of the drive sat a final video file dated 2 weeks before Walter's death. His face was all bone, his voice still sharp. Nathan, if you're watching this, you've already lost everything. That means they think they've won. Good. They've stopped watching. You have proof now. Use it or disappear. Either way, the Halstons lose. I stayed 3 nights in that mountain lodge memorizing every paper, duplicating every encrypted file. The choice Walter mentioned, take the fortune or seek justice, wasn't a choice anymore. Running would mean letting them win again. When I finally left Silvergate, the mid-size pickup felt heavier with truth than with gear. The drive back to Fairbend wasn't about escape anymore. It was a march toward reckoning. My first stop was the Federal Investigations Office downtown. Agent Dana Collier listened without expression, the kind of look reserved for people claiming aliens or conspiracies. But when I slid the folders across her desk, her silence changed shape. She called in 2 more agents, then her supervisor. What followed were 4 months of subpoenas, sealed hearings, and forensic teams digging through 40 years of Halston Enterprises accounts. They traced slush funds, falsified maintenance records, and bribes that reached all the way to Bryan County commissioners. The arrests hit on a Tuesday morning. Brent Halston was pulled from his members' lodge breakfast in handcuffs. 3 commissioners, Judge Alden, and the county sheriff followed hours later. Charges ranged from tax fraud to conspiracy, and environmental penalties that would bankrupt the company. Murder couldn't be tried. Martin Halston was long dead, but his son would pay for carrying on the lie. Laura's arrest came next. Agents found her outside Lily's school. She called me that evening, voice shaking behind jail static. "How could you do this to your children, Nathan? They'll see their mother in handcuffs." "Their mother was never real," I said flatly. "You were a story built by a man who used you to destroy me. Now they deserve the truth." She sobbed then, confession spilling out. She'd been promised a share of the mineral profits, groomed since 16 to get close to me, to marry, to have children, and to hand the rights to the Halstons once I was ruined. The trials dominated national headlines. Timber dynasty crumbles in 4-decade conspiracy. Brent Halston got 14 years federal time. Laura Whitmore received 4 years, likely to serve half. The rest cut deals and turned on one another. But my real victory came quietly, when the court returned Jake and Lily to me. They'd been staying with Laura's mother during the investigation. The first reunion was awkward. Jake stiff, arms folded, Lily running into my chest, sobbing, asking if her mother was truly bad. I knelt beside them in our small rental house near their school. "Your mom made terrible choices," I said softly, "but that doesn't erase the good she once tried to be. People are messy, honey. They can do wrong and still care. Healing didn't come fast. Therapy sessions, long drives, silent dinners. But slowly, Jake's anger thinned to understanding. Lily's confusion settled into calm. I used Walter's inheritance to open a small outfit called Colburn & Sons Timber Works, hiring men who'd been crushed by the Halston collapse. Carl Benson came back as floor manager. Wages doubled. Respect finally replaced fear. Some evenings after the mill lights go dark, I still drive out to the storage depot on Highway 17. The old unit's still mine. Same cot, same wooden toolbox, same chill in the air. I pay the $92 rent each month and stand there a while, letting the quiet remind me how far I fell and how far I climbed back. The world thinks this story ended with arrests and restitution. They're wrong. It ends here. In this silent room where the old Nathan died and the man my father hoped I'd become finally took his first full breath. Marvin Tate. The night watchman who once pretended not to notice me sleeping behind metal walls, now runs my night shift at Colburn & Sons Timberworks. He likes to remind me, "You remember where you came from, boss, and you'll never forget where you're headed." He's right. Uncle Walter Briggs was right too. Sometimes you have to lose everything before the truth shows its face. My father died because he refused to surrender what was his, and it took nearly 4 decades for justice to reach our door. Walter gave his life in silence so I could live mine in honesty. I went from heating beans on a portable burner inside a 10-foot cell to owning a business worth over $7.6 million, but the real fortune isn't in numbers. It's in Jake's laugh when he insists he can solve calculus without help. It's in Lily's pride when she shows me her school project on sustainable forestry, proof that good roots grow again, even after a wildfire. Most nights I drive past the storage depot on Highway 17. The same concrete walls still stand there, cold and plain. I keep paying the rent, not because I need the space, but because I owe that broken version of myself a visit now and then. The man who lived there taught me what freedom really costs. Laura Whitmore once told me I'd end up broke and forgotten. She was wrong, twice. Money isn't wealth, and solitude isn't the same as being alone. The real loneliness is pretending, living inside a lie while calling it love. Truth stripped me bare, but it gave me something lies never could: peace. And that peace was earned inside a 5x10 storage unit, spooning cold beans from a can, realizing that integrity, once lost, is still recoverable if you fight for it. My name is Nathan Colburn. I wasn't a hero, just a floor manager who refused to stay silent. But sometimes that's enough. Sometimes the man everyone overlooks is exactly the one who tears down an empire built on deceit. If this story hit you somewhere real, share it with someone standing at their own edge. Leave a comment with the truth you had to face and what it cost you. And don't forget to subscribe, because the next story might just prove that ordinary people can still rewrite impossible endings. Because every life hides a story waiting to be told.